Comme vous savez, comme j'ai même dit tout à l'heure, l'NPD a poussé depuis des semaines pour fermer les échappatoires qui existent présentement pour les fabricants et pour les importateurs. On a une situation où même si on avait une liste des armes à feu, les fabricants pourraient contourner parce qu'effectivement, c'est un système d'honneur au Canada. Alors, on trouvait ça extrêmement important de renforcer le projet de loi pour faire une sorte que ces échappatoires-là soient fermés. Aussi, on a, avec les armes à feu fantômes, de plus en plus une menace à travers le pays. Là, on voit dans certaines régions du Canada une augmentation de 10 fois ou 15 fois dans le nombre de armes à feu fantômes qui sont saisies. Mais présentement, au niveau législatif, des policiers qui rentrent ne pourraient pas nécessairement poursuivre des individus qui amassent avec des morceaux des armes à feu, puis aussi avec les autres aspects de ces armes à feu fantômes. Puis on trouvait ça extrêmement important aussi de renforcer les droits des Autochtones, ceux qui étaient complètement négligés dans les premiers amendements qui ont été offerts l'année passée. Alors, c'est tous ces éléments-là qui fait en sorte qu'on ferme ces échappatoires. La définition technique est très importante à cet élément-là. Alors, l'NPD, Jagmeet Singh, a été très clair là-dessus, moi-même aussi, en tant que critique. Et aujourd'hui, on voit que le gouvernement semble voir justement l'importance de fermer ces échappatoires et fermer aussi l'accès que les criminels ont aux armes à feu fantômes. So the NDP has been pushing for a number of weeks on a number of issues. The loopholes that manufacturers and importers have is something that has been incredibly egregious. We basically have had an honor system in this country in terms of classification. That is not something that's appropriate when you put forward a list and simply another model can be put on the Canadian market. That is not a way of enforcing effective firearms measures. And so closing all of those loopholes, putting the manufacturers as responsible rather than putting the onus on legal gun owners is something that the NDP found extremely important as well. We are seeing with ghost guns a marked increase. Tragically, the Ministry of Justice does not yet compile figures on this. In the United States, we've seen a marked increase. Joe Biden, who's taken action against ghost guns, we saw last year in the United States 20,000 ghost guns seized as part of criminal activity. This is something that in Canada we've seen a tenfold rise in certain parts of the country, and it is something that needed to be profoundly addressed. And the third element is around Indigenous peoples. There was no consultation with Indigenous peoples around the amendments that came out just before the end of the year. We felt very strongly that there needed to be a very strong language in the bill that really talks about the rights of Indigenous peoples. These are all elements that are extremely important. The technical definition is essential to closing the loopholes that manufacturers and importers currently have. And so we see the government moving in a direction that we have pushed them in, and we are looking forward to clause-by-clause discussion in the next few days.
Donc, vous êtes satisfait avec ce que le gouvernement présente en ce moment?
On trouve que c'est important de fermer les échappatoires. C'était une demande, d'ailleurs, de police se souvient depuis des années qu'on ferme ces échappatoires-là. Parce qu'on peut avoir la liste, des armes à feu, mais si ça peut être contourné si facilement, si c'était un échappatoire qui était aussi gros pour conduire un camion, ça mène pas à une situation au niveau des armes à feu qui fait en sorte que les gens soient protégés. Alors, de fermer ces échappatoires-là, pour nous, c'était un élément primordial pour mettre en place vraiment un projet de loi qui a du sens et qui fait qu'est-ce qu'on veut faire tous ensemble, ce qui est de protéger les gens à travers le pays.
The leading gun control group
Excuse.
saying that you are taking a duplicitous stand on this issue, that you have capitulated, and thousands of assault-style firearms now in circulation will not be banned because of your actions. What do you say to that?
Police se souvient has been asking for years to close these manufacturers' loopholes. And the reality is, if we had the list of firearms that were put out before Christmas, it was so easy with the loopholes that you could drive a truck through simply to get around the law. That is not in anybody's interest. If we're really talking about making sure that firearms legislation is respected, you can't have these massive loopholes. And that's why we pushed strongly to close all the loopholes that manufacturers and importers currently have. But in addition, the ghost gun threat is something that is growing right across this country. This is where an individual can simply take a 3D printer, legally obtain firearms pieces and parts, and legally possessed ammunition. And the police entering that premises can't necessarily do anything. We need to toughen the laws so that ghost guns are not any longer put in place in our streets. Right? Right. Mais ils ont non, pas du tout. Pas du tout. Non, le contraire. Le contraire. L'idée qu'on ferme tous ces échappatoires-là, c'est extrêmement important. La définition est primordiale. Il est lié justement à cette fait-là, qu'on a justement des échappatoires fermés, la définition qui est en place. Pour nous, qu'est-ce qu'on veut éviter, simplement, c'est qu'on a d'autres armes à feu qui rentrent sur le marché. Ce qui a été l'approche du gouvernement jusqu'à maintenant, c'est d'agir après. Nous, on veut prévenir pour que ça arrête avant que ces armes à feu-là viennent au marché. And this is an important point. What we're doing is stopping firearms from coming into the market in the first place. And the idea that we would try to close the door afterwards, rather than ensuring that these new firearms don't come onto the market in the first place, is actually the approach that we feel very strongly will ensure a better level of safety for Canadians.
Is there a deal between the NDP, or did the NDP require that their support of the minority government was contingent on them being able to support this gun bill?
No, confidence in supply is a completely separate issue. And so the confidence, I'll finish on this, the confidence in supply issues, the 29 very clear indicators around confidence in supply. Those are the conditions that have been laid out by our leader, and those are the conditions that are part of the confidence and supply deal. This is not part of that.
And why is the NDP in support of a definition that is future, forward-looking, and doesn't apply to current guns that people own?
Because we believe we have to stop these firearms from coming onto the market in the future. And the problem with the way we've approached firearms legislation for years is that we've simply done it after the fact. After they come onto the market, those firearms are then, through order in council or through other means, then banned. Why doesn't it make more sense to make sure that those firearms don't come on the market in the first place? That is our approach. And these gaping loopholes that you could drive a truck through are something that I believe governments should have taken a stand on far before now. And this is something that Police Julian has been asking for years, and the Coalition for Gun Control as well.
In effect, the NDP are okay grandfathering in everything that is owned currently and everything that is bought before this bill becomes effect. That seems to be what you're saying. And your focus is on what's next, not on the current. Is that incorrect? Because you keep on dodging the current.
I'm saying very, very clearly, I would disagree with you on your characterization. First off, we're making sure that these firearms don't come into the market in the first place, that we are looking forward, moving forward. The secondly, and the minister pointed this out as well, what we've seen over the last few years is a lack of government consultation. We saw this with the original amendments that were put out last November. We believe very strongly that the Firearms Advisory Committee needs to be reconstituted. This was a committee that existed before. It had activists, or those who are concerned about firearms legislation. It also had law enforcement. It had Indigenous peoples. It had as well hunters and farmers. This is the kind of consensus that we can bring together people on. And as the minister pointed out, the whole issue of classification will be referred to that committee.
Is Is the RCMP firearms program ill-equipped to do that?
The RCMP firearms program up until now has not done what it needs to do, which is really ensure that firearms manufacturers and firearms importers that don't have loopholes to crawl through, that they don't have the ability to classify their own firearms. And this is something that I think will make a big difference by ensuring that all of these manufacturers and all of these importers have to go through that classification process, have to be essentially approved. And with the technical definition, there is very clear guidelines as well to that. And I certainly believe, and we've said this before, both in terms of the resources at the border and also the resources that are needed for the RCMP firearms program, that the government needs to be making those investments.
Why not deal with the future and the current assault-style firearms that are on the market?
Right now, the reality is that there are loopholes that you can drive a truck through. And the reality is we needed to close those loopholes. Those loopholes should have been closed years ago. That's something that Police Souvienne has been calling for years as well. Dernière question? OK, merci beaucoup. Thank you. Merci.